Subprocesses. We mentioned before that a subprocess could contain one or more subprocesses. So basically a process would be like a parent process, and then a subprocess would be a child process. Each subprocess contains an operational sequence. These subprocesses can be used as many times as necessary. For example, here we have a main process, and in this main process, we have several subprocesses. Okay, so here we can see we have an offer subprocess, an invoice subprocess, and a shipping subprocess. So here we have our invoice subprocess. We can see inside of the main process, we have this subprocess. But inside of this subprocess, we have another subprocess. And maybe if at several points of a process we need to update an ERP, we could be reusing this subprocess in several different points of a process. Okay, so we have to take into account that a subprocess consists of two parts. First of all, let's see our main process here. It's got what we call the compressed notation of a subprocess. So we can see it's got these three objects. And this subprocess also has a compressed notation, okay, because in the invoiced subprocess, inside of it, there's another subprocess to update an ERP. Okay, so this is what we call these four objects that we can see here on the screen. These are what we call the compressed notation of a subprocess. Now, each one of these compressed notations has to have a developed notation. And within the developed notation, we're going to have all the different attributes, all the different actions of what's going to be performed within that subprocess. How do we connect a subprocess extended notation to its compressed notation? So all we have to do is we add the compressed notation, as we can see here in the image, and then we add the extended notation. Inside of the extended notation, we're going to add whatever we want. It could be, obviously, it's always going to start with an IS, and then we can add tasks, system tasks, gateways, whatever we need. Okay. Now, once we've done this, we're going to connect all the objects, as we can see here in the image. And once we've connected all the objects, we have to go to the collapse notation and indicate to what IS it's going to be connected to. Okay, now we've already got it connected. The next thing we're going to see here are the different types of subprocesses. So this would be the normal subprocess, or the main type of subprocess. It has one or several inlets, and it only has one unique outlet. And inside of the subprocess, we're going to have a group of objects like tasks, other subprocesses, gateways, and so on. So this is going to be an operational independent unit of the main process. And then we have some subprocesses that allow us to inlay an event inside of them. One of them would be the subprocess with an inlaid time event, and the other one would be a subprocess with an inlaid message event. Okay, here we have the codes, SP, SPT, SPM. Now we're going to see how each one of these work. Okay, so subprocess is quite straightforward. Flow goes in, we got a few objects that have to be triggered, and when they're completed, the flow is going to go out. Okay, but we're going to see some more examples. As it says here, it's essential to know how to make good use of a subprocess when it comes to diagramming. Some reasons that suggest the need for subprocess are, for example, management of an independent operative unit within the process, or improvement of the implementation and maintenance times of the process. Or maybe we need to solve a specific scenario that can only be solved by using a subprocess. Or an improvement of the understanding and organization of a diagram, and much more. We're going to see some examples. So here we see our first example. We have a process that's called new product process, okay? And here it says marketing decides to launch a product. The expense approval committee, they meet and they decide if this project must continue. After the meeting, the editor always compiles a report with the results and uploads it to library. Okay, so here we've got an initial action where marketing decides to launch a product. Then we have a committee who has to meet. After that, an editor has to create a report, and after that, it has to be uploaded to library. If the project continues, the laboratory is also going to do some testing, and based on these tests, then again, the expense approval committee is going to meet. They're going to decide if the project continues. If it does, the warehouse must also perform some tests, and based on the results, the expense approval committee meets again and decides if the project is going to continue. If it does, then production begins. Okay, and so on. Here we have a graphical representation of this process with all of its objects. So here we can see marketing decides to launch the product. After that, we have an expense approval, an editor, and we're uploading the information in a library. If the project must continue, the laboratory runs tests. There's the expense approval again, the committee. Then the editor has to do his work, and then we have to upload the information in the library. If the project continues, the warehouse does these tests. After that, there's an expense approval. Again, the editor has to be involved, and again, we have to upload all that information in the library. So here we can see that there's several actions that are quite repetitive. We're doing them several times. How could we improve this diagram by using a subprocess? Here we can see an example. Let's say here we have marketing. They decide they want to launch a process. And in this subprocess, we're going to trigger all these repetitive activities. Okay? Once they've been performed, the flow goes out and we decide whether we want to continue with the project or not. Okay? So then the flow goes here, the laboratory has to run their tests, and then again, we're going to call the same subprocess and we're going to trigger all these different activities, all these repetitive actions. Okay? Once they've been done, the flow goes to this gateway. If the project continues, it goes to the warehouse, and we launch the subprocess again. Okay? So here we've got an important difference from this scenario that was initially diagrammed and this other scenario that's using subprocesses. Obviously, the result is going to be exactly the same, and both of these processes are correct. But in the second scenario, we can see that we've dramatically reduced the amount of objects that are going to be modeled in the process by almost half. This way, we not only get a faster, better implementation, but we can also optimize the maintenance. Let's imagine a few months later, the company decides they want to add 2 new fields to all of these different objects. Okay, maybe there's a description field they want to add or a field to upload documents. Obviously, it's going to be much easier to make these changes in this process than to make the changes in this process that has lots of additional objects to configure. Okay, so here we can see a good example of a correct use of subprocesses.